and sorted now, but apologies. So it's really great to see so many of you here today for today's Lunch and Learn session. I'm Lauren and I head up marketing across CX Partners and Sopra Steria Next. So while we just wait for a few more people to join us, it's lovely to see everybody filtering in. I just wanted to introduce the session today and tell you what our Lunch and Learn series is all about. So if you've not been to one of these before, the purpose of this series is to offer a programme of learning so that we can share some of our team's knowledge and expertise with you all. We run these sessions every month and we'd love to see you again next time. So you can keep up to date with all the sessions either by joining our mailing list or following us on LinkedIn, and just drop me a note in the chat if you'd like to be added to our mailing list. So we'd love to hear from you and get your feedback on today's session. So please do get in touch on marketing@cxpartners.co.uk. Let us know if this time works for you, if you like the format, if there's any particular topics that you would like to see from us in the future. So this month's session is about using technology to deliver sustainable outcomes. And today our speakers join us from our sister company, Sopra Steria Next. So in a second, I'm going to hand over to Kevin, Andrew and Avinash. But first, I just wanted to flag that if you'd like to turn on closed captions, you can find that in the bottom left of your screen. And then for the Q&A, I'll pop back at the end and we'll be using Slido, which you should be able to see in the bottom right of your screen. So please add in any questions as we go through today. And then, as I say, I'll pop back at the end and ask the team any questions that you submit. And then finally, before I hand over to Kevin, I just wanted to say that this is a one-way webinar. So you can see us, but nobody can see you or hear you. So please feel free to scoff a sandwich if that's what you would like to do. Kevin, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you everyone for giving up some time to come to this talk today. Currently, it's estimated that digital technology is responsible for about 4% of global carbon emissions. I think that's quite sobering when you think that one of the main public villains behind carbon emissions is the aviation sector, and yet those of us in tech create nearly double the footprint of airlines. Worse still, academic research suggests that our contribution is likely to grow to 8% of global emissions by 2025. I need hardly add that this percentage growth is not because of other global emissions that are reducing significantly. It's the absolute growth of digital technologies increasing so much faster than the other contributory sectors. However, this research is just an estimate. It's not inevitable. And as we will be discussing, we can use technology well in order to sidestep these outcomes and work towards a happier future. As Lauren has said, my name is Kevin McNish, and together with my colleagues Avinash Lunge and Andrew Grigg, we will be talking over the next 30 minutes about the use of technology to deliver sustainable outcomes. Given that the subject for this talk is technology in general, we thought it would be helpful to narrow down and focus on just one technology in particular. And I think it will come as no great surprise, given the current state of the market, that we felt AI was a valuable starting point for this discussion. The use of AI has grown massively over the last few years. A recent Sopra Steria report on the state of AI notes that the annual growth rate in market spend has been 40% every year since 2019. And while we do expect it to slow down in the coming years, we're still anticipating seeing annual growth of around 19%. And with that in mind, in this talk, we wanted to highlight the three areas you can see on the slide related to AI and sustainability. Firstly, what is the problem? And as we'll see, AI introduces a lot of environmental concerns, some more obvious than others. At the same time, though, AI also presents opportunities to tackle climate change in very real and effective ways. So while I will start off by talking about some of the challenges, Avinash will pick up on those opportunities in the second part of the talk, looking at lessons learned by Sopra Steria as a leader in this space. And in the third part of the talk, Andrew will look more broadly still at the opportunities that we see in the market and technology for a brighter and more carbon neutral future. And to remind you again, as Lauren said, at the end we will have about 15 minutes of Q&A using the Slido, which is built into WebEx. So if anybody has any questions, we would love to take them, and thank you again. So, what is the problem that AI poses to the environment? Well, when we think about AI and its impact on the environment, that is, when we do think about its impact on the environment, we often focus on the vast amounts of energy that are used in data centers for processing and storage. One thing that we tend not to look at is the use of fresh water that is demanded by AI. As we can see from this slide, it is expected that by 2040, much of England will experience severe stress in our daily water usage. And by 2050, England will have a daily deficit of 5 billion litres of water. This will have a huge impact on any businesses or technologies with a high dependence on water, with one such technology being, yes, AI. Fresh water is used in cooling for power and data storage, both of which lie at the heart of AI. And of course, fresh water is used in a lot of power generation. And this isn't confined to the UK, despite the slightly odd slide we've got on the right here about Europe and where water usage is being used in large parts of Europe. And indeed, we're seeing AI as being a massive global problem. We think that, or it's been estimated, that AI is likely to lead to a global water usage rise from 1.1 billion cubic litres just 10 years ago to 6.6 billion cubic litres next year. That means that next year the world will be using half of the total UK usage of water that they had this year. So yes, water is a significant concern, but the environmental impact doesn't end there. AI uses vast quantities of electricity, noticeably in training, which has led to a fourfold increase in computing power every year for the last 5 years. This is easily outpacing any efficiency improvements that we've been able to make through our efforts towards net zero. This in turn leads to massive carbon emissions. While the impact here varies according to the particular energy mix and type of AI, training a large language model is equivalent to the life cycle emissions of 5 cars worth of carbon. Let's just take a look at the impact of training GPT-3, the model which was developed and then simplified to create ChatGPT 2 years ago. Now, when GPT-3 was released in the summer of 2022, it was absolutely groundbreaking. When ChatGPT was released the following November, as you might well remember, it took the world by storm. Until that is, GPT-4 came out a year later. And we've now more recently seen GPT-10, also known as Strawberry, being released. So if we go back 2 years to GPT-3, we're going back to what's actually a much simpler time. But even so, the training of GPT-3 used up to 700,000 litres of water to train it in the cooling and production process. Now that's the equivalent of producing 370 BMW cars. The electricity used was 1,287 megawatt hours. Now, to put that into some context, that would take 3 months for one wind turbine to produce. And the carbon emissions were 552 tons. That is in turn equivalent to 205 round trips from Paris to New York. So as such, we can see that even 2 years ago, the environmental impact of a large language model, which was being superseded even as it was being rolled out, was phenomenal. Of course, not all AI systems, sorry, next slide, Andrew. Thanks. Not all AI systems are the same when it comes to their impact on the environment. And we can talk about different shades of AI, as in this chart here. Red is AI made with very little or even no consideration given to the environmental impact that the AI might have, either in its development or its use. This probably sums up the vast majority of AI being developed commercially today. Yellow AI, by contrast, has been made with at least an awareness of the environmental impact and has some attempts to reduce that impact built into its design. However, efforts to reduce impact are very different from a net positive benefit. So it's saying, yes, we will still harm the environment, but not as much as if we hadn't thought about this. So as such, yellow AI still has a negative impact on the environment, but less than red. And finally, green AI, as you would imagine, is made to reduce the impact on the environment. And unlike yellow AI, does have a net positive impact. That is, the benefits that come from using and developing green AI outweigh the environmental costs. Now, before I hand over to Avinash to talk about what Sopra Steria have been doing with AI and the environment, I want to just wrap up this section by talking about the fundamental tension that lies at the heart of sustainable AI, to which I've been referring for the last 10 minutes. I think everybody now has targets to, at the very least, reduce the carbon footprint of their business and their life. In the case of government, this involves very strict net zero ambitions, and organizations are increasingly having to report requirements placed on them regarding their environmental impact. AI, as we will see, promises to hold some of the solutions to meeting those net zero targets and to helping with reporting. And I think there are lots of exciting opportunities for us to use AI to help the environment. At the same time, as we've been seeing over the last 10 minutes, AI also presents a significant challenge to environmental ambitions. The massive demand that currently exists for AI through its ability to drive efficiencies threatens to have a significant and lasting effect on the environment. So to achieve their sustainability outcomes then, organizations must address the net benefits of AI for the environment in line with their strategic direction. Now, Avinash is going to take this forwards in discussing what it is that Sopra Steria has learned as a leading sustainable business.
Thanks, Kevin, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Avinash Lunge, and I'm the UK Head of Climate and Environmental Sustainability at Sopra Steria. And today I'll be sharing 3 examples of how Sopra Steria are using technology and data to reduce energy, emissions, and implement cost-efficient building maintenance. Now, as Kevin mentioned before, as a recognised leader for climate action, we've learnt some important lessons along our journey, and we'd like to share those with you so you can take them back to your organisation and to help you on your sustainability journey. So I'm going to start by briefly outlining some of the key corporate environmental objectives we're pursuing at Sopra Steria. In terms of reducing our carbon footprint and fighting climate change, we've committed to achieve net zero by the end of 2040, which is 10 years ahead of the UK government's target to achieve net zero by 2050. And this includes a target for us to achieve for our suppliers accounting for the greatest proportion of our supply chain emissions to have set emission reduction targets themselves by the end of 2025. And that will become a bit more clearer as I kind of go through my slides of why supply chain is really important. And in terms of managing waste sustainably, we've set a target to ensure that all the waste that we produce as a business is diverted away from landfill, so that we're striving to reduce the waste that we produce in the first place, increase the recovery and reuse of waste materials, as well as improve rates of recycling in order to support a circular economy. And finally, in terms of using clean energy and using it efficiently, we have a target to ensure that 100% of the electricity that we use across our offices comes from renewable sources. And in addition, we have an annual target to reduce energy consumption by 3% in 2024 compared with the previous year. Now, our first case study is based on an innovative energy saving strategy that we've implemented to help us to measure, monitor and reduce electricity consumption at our 2 largest sites in Hemel Hempstead and Newport. So we've installed 51 current transformer sensors, or CT sensors, that measure electrical current passing through circuits that are located throughout the 2 buildings. And by combining the CT sensors, the Internet of Things, and an AI-powered building management system, we've been able to generate and share data that provides a granular view of electricity consumption across different areas of the building. And this provides our building maintenance contractor and site facilities teams with the capability to perform real-time monitoring by pinpointing anomalies or unusual spikes in consumption to identify areas where electricity is being wasted. And in turn, those teams have been able to make proactive adjustments to equipment and processes to reduce consumption without disrupting site operations. Now, a specific example of where this has made a positive difference is where the data has revealed that fan coil units and air conditioning units were running longer than necessary in certain zones after working hours. And this led to our facilities team adjusting time schedules on the building management system to ensure that those units weren't running outside of operational hours. And this led to reductions in electricity usage of 26% and 37% in the respective building areas. Now, the sensor data has also helped us to identify a set of meeting rooms that were consuming electricity during non-operational hours. Once again, this led us to adjust the lighting schedules and switch off printers that were left on standby mode, resulting in a 24% reduction in electricity usage across these rooms. In the first half of 2024, compared with the same period last year, we've managed to reduce overall electricity consumption by 5.1% at Hemel Hempstead and 6.1% at Newport. And we've spent just over £400,000 less on energy during this timeline. Now, in our second case study, we look at how Sopra Steria's approach to optimizing cleaning operations using sensor data provides a good example of how technology can drive the efficient delivery of facilities management services. Firstly, the sensors installed across different office areas are continuously collecting data on occupancy patterns throughout the day. And this real-time data helps us to identify which areas are being used more heavily, such as meeting rooms, open plan spaces, and toilets, and at what times during the day peak usage occurs. And based on this occupancy data, we've been able to realign cleaning schedules with our cleaning contractor to focus on the areas that need the most attention. So, for instance, if a specific office zone sees heavier footfall in the mornings, cleaning teams have been able to prioritise those spaces for midday refreshes. And conversely, in quieter areas or during off-peak times, the cleaning frequency can be scaled back. And this targeted approach allows us to reschedule and redistribute resources more effectively, reducing unnecessary cleaning in underutilised areas, whilst concentrating efforts where they're most needed. And this data-driven strategy has helped Sopra Steria to reduce costs related to services provided by external contractors, particularly where we've discovered a reduction in demand. Now, when it comes to sustainability and reducing emissions, technology alone isn't the answer. It's not a silver bullet that solves all problems. And while technology can play a major role in data collection, analysis, and delivering efficiencies, the reality is that most emissions reductions require deeper engagement with suppliers and people. So a staggering 86% of Sopra Steria's overall greenhouse gas emissions come from purchased goods and services. And this highlights how crucial it is to focus on our supply chain when aiming to reduce emissions. And without working closely with our suppliers, Sopra Steria, and frankly most organisations, cannot achieve net zero. So collecting good quality data is essential for accurately understanding where emissions come from. And this data allows us to identify which suppliers have already taken steps to reduce their emissions and which need further support. And with precise data, we can better target our efforts and work collaboratively with suppliers to help them progress on their sustainability journey. And this brings us to our final case study, Sopra Steria's Responsible Procurement Programme. So our procurement teams have been gathering data from suppliers to identify those that have set emission reduction targets and are making progress, as well as those that we need to engage with more closely. And this initiative allows us to track and measure supplier progress, ensuring we're driving real change throughout our supply chain. Now, previously, we've calculated the emissions associated with the goods and services we purchase using spend-based data. Now, the problem with this approach is that it links emissions directly to the amount spent. So the more you spend, the more emissions you're attributed, which isn't an accurate reflection of the actual impact, especially as businesses grow. So instead, we've shifted to using actual supplier emissions data instead of making estimated calculations based on supplier spend. And this gives us a clearer and more realistic picture of the emissions coming from our supply chain based on their emissions data and the annual progress they're making to reduce their emissions. Now, through collecting this data, we've discovered that 38% of our suppliers have set or are committed to setting emission reduction targets that have been validated by the Science Based Targets Initiative. And in 2024, it will be the first year that we'll be using actual supply data in the calculation of our corporate carbon footprint to ascertain what impact that will have in helping us to reduce our emissions further and where we need to do more engagement. So clearly, there's a lot of work for us to do and to ensure we can achieve net zero, but this is nevertheless a significant step in the right direction. So to summarise, we've demonstrated that a data-driven energy management can have a real impact on reducing electricity consumption. So by consistently analysing and acting on data at Sopra Steria, we've not only reduced our energy costs, but also contributed to a more sustainable and environmentally friendly operation at 2 of our largest sites. Sensor data has also helped Sopra Steria transform our approach to facilities management, making our operations more efficient, responsive, and tailored to actual usage patterns across our offices. Now, while technology supports our sustainability efforts, it's the engagement and collaboration with our suppliers that will make the difference. Now, as we move forward, it's crucial that we continue building strong relationships with our supply chain, ensuring they are a part of the journey towards achieving net zero. Therefore, technology alone isn't enough to solve sustainability challenges, but alongside human ingenuity and data, it serves as a key enabler for the transition towards sustainability. I'm now going to hand over to Andrew, who's going to explain how we've embedded the knowledge that we've learned to help other organisations make their use of technology more sustainable.
Thanks, Avinash. I'm Andrew Grigg, Head of Sustainability Consulting at Sopra Steria Next, and I'll be sharing practical examples of work we've done with other organisations to solve some of these challenges. I'm hoping that attendees today can take some inspiration from these examples and apply them to their own businesses. So we approach how to best use technology for sustainable outcomes using a 3-step process. The 3 steps are measure, act, and review. Taking each in turn, measure. As Lord Kelvin said, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And as Kevin said earlier, there are huge macro impacts to the world through the growth of digital tech and AI in particular. But at an organizational level, businesses are struggling to quantify the impact that technology is having on their organization. Measuring the impact is the key first step. Secondly, act. Once you know where you stand and have a baseline measurement, take bold action based on the areas you have ambitions against. And finally, review and report. Regularly check in on how your action is moving down, revisit your ambitions. This is our framework for using technology to deliver sustainable outcomes, and I'm now going to share some examples with you. So firstly, in the measurement space, I want to share work we've done this year with a UK government agency. The client was faced with 3 main challenges. Firstly, they had a growing digital estate, but they didn't have the data to support them with knowing the scale and source of both their costs and the environmental impact. In other words, they knew they had a problem, but they didn't know its size and scale. Secondly, employee engagement. Employees wanted to act, but they were unsure where to focus. There was a risk of staff attrition and motivation due to a lack of movement in this area. And finally, regulation. The client was facing new green and government commitments from April 2025. but they didn't know how they were going to be impacted by them. They didn't even know how they stood against the current set. So the approach we took, we used G4IT, which is a platform for managing the plans for reducing environmental impact. G4IT looks at 5 environmental criteria, including climate change, and 4 life cycle assessment stages, those being manufacturing, distribution, use, and end of life stages. G4IT helps identify and act on the biggest emitters in the IT estate across devices, applications, cloud, and infrastructure. We applied a phased approach, meaning that we could start with a partial data set, and G4IT has been built on recognized standards. It's been developed in partnership with ADEME, which is the French equivalent of DEFRA in the UK. So the 3 main benefits out of this work were, first of all, cost savings. We baselined for the first time the client's ICT estate across scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, as well as water and energy usage. This resulted in identifying opportunities to reduce energy demand by 50% and carbon emissions by 65% in certain areas. Employee impact, so employees were now aware of the greatest impact they can make because we told them where their current problems lay. And finally, gave them the confidence they could meet regulation. We identified their maturity against greening government commitments and actions to take. So in summary, this organisation needed to measure the environmental impact of technology, but didn't know how to do it itself. We helped them to know where it stood today, what opportunities existed in future, and importantly, where to focus its energy to reduce its impact. And we can do the same with your organisation. Another area under measurement specific to AI is the measurement of AI's impact. Now, organizations need to measure the impact of AI at 2 stages. Firstly, before running the AI model, so during the design phase, and also once the AI has been deployed during its operation. To do this, this slide shares some tools. So, for example, Code Carbon, Carbon Tracker, and these measure and monitor carbon footprint, electricity consumption of AI projects directly. Now, these tools are free, and we in Sopra Steria have knowledge of not only how best to use them, but we also worked in partnership with other organizations to develop some of these. Now, organizations need expert support to get the most out of them. And again, we're helping organizations navigate both the complexity and the measurement of AI. So coming back to our 3-step process, I would now want to cover some examples in step 2, which is around taking actions. So the first area under action specific to AI is selecting the right number of cores or hardware that deliver your AI solution. We've used analysis on the left to show that by limiting the amount of hardware used in AI deployment, organizations can reduce CO2 by a factor of 7 or 86%. And on the right is a map of the carbon intensity of electricity. The idea here is to choose locations for data centers that have a low environmental impact, considering factors of local energy mix and availability of renewable energy sources. We in Sopra Steria have estimated that based on EMBA and Energy Institute data, by moving data centers from Germany to France, a business could save 86% of carbon emissions. The bottom line here is organizations need to make decisions about which key suppliers to use. Which suppliers you use have a major impact in cost and environmental impact, particularly on scope 3, and we can help you with making those decisions. Finally, review and reporting the action you've taken. There's one example I want to share on this. So a reminder that Sopra Steria Next is a European firm, and this example is from Norway. This is a great example of how we've used technology to help our clients report on their progress. The client challenge, well, Mesta is Norway's leading contractor in the operation and maintenance of roads. Mesta wanted to get an overview of the CO2 emissions in their fleet of vehicles. In addition, the largest customer, the Norwegian Public Roads Administration, wanted to receive relevant emission data automatically and directly via their API. They were currently doing this through a very manual and time-consuming process to collect data and report on this their CO2 emissions. So the approach we took, we used our expertise in understanding sustainability reporting requirements and the technology that underpins it by using Python code and Databricks and other tools to extract data from various systems at Mesta. We then merged, filtered, and then sent it to the Norwegian Public Road Administration's new API. The benefits were three main ones. First, increased efficiency. The need for heavy manual reporting had been eliminated by this new API. Accuracy, the manual work required was gone, and the accuracy of human error had now been reduced. And finally, reduced risk. Given we removed the risk of data issues, Mesta were confident their reporting was accurate. The key takeaway for me from this is all organizations now need to report on the sustainability operations. This is time consuming, complex, and at risk of making errors if they do it themselves. We can help in this space to save time and effort and improve accuracy of meeting regulations so organizations can focus on the higher value activities in their businesses. So in summary, I wanted to leave on a message of hope. Yes, there are huge environmental impacts of technology. If insufficient focus is given to the sustainability of technology, its uncontrolled growth will push the world towards further water depletion, massive energy consumption, growing CO2 emissions, alongside huge financial costs. However, as Kevin alluded to, it doesn't have to be like this. By taking control through measurement, action, and reporting on your use of technology, there are huge benefits. Saving cost, meeting regulation, and reducing environmental impact are the main ones here. So you can take control of your use of technology and we can help you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to questions.
Hello, everyone, again. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. And I've spotted one question in the Slido already, but anybody else out there has any questions, please drop them in and we'll go through them now. So I think the first question, I mean, it's one that I've heard repeatedly and I don't think will come as a surprise to all of you. Someone's commented, I feel quite overwhelmed by how to get started with AI. Do you have any advice for first steps that we can take in a way that is beneficial to my business, but also not harmful to the planet?
I can kick off with this, and Avinash, Kevin, do chime in. Yeah, I echo. I can hear you. What's the word? The not knowing where to start. What I'd probably start is if you're looking at how your business itself is considering the use of AI, is really do a maturity assessment, a readiness assessment. How ready is your organization to use AI? It requires a huge amount of data, and there's a number of foundations or pillars that require consideration before starting on that journey. Actually, we in Sopra Steria Next are just launching our AI readiness assessment, which does exactly this. It works through the pillars of AI readiness from the sustainability angles we talked about today, the ethical considerations, the data that it requires, the culture of your organization and what's needed there. And really, it will give you confidence of where you are, how ready you are to use AI and what are the tangible next steps you need to do. So I'd suggest that would be the first thing.
I would just chip in there, completely agree, and especially about that sense of overwhelm at the start with AI. And what we're seeing is actually quite a few companies that want to get involved with AI, but as Andrew said, the data just isn't even there yet. The data quality isn't ready. They don't have the systems in place, which on some levels may feel quite frustrating, but on others it's actually quite good because it means you can start to think about some of these impact questions around sustainability now. About how important is sustainability in your overall business values and objectives? Where does it sit? How high do you want to place it? As you start to move into AI, from the conceptual stage, you can start to think about, okay, do we want to make a net positive contribution? Or do we want to use AI to reduce our carbon footprint? And so you're actually, in many ways at a really good stage right now to start thinking through some of those questions about how AI can help you best. But I totally get you with the overwhelm, and certainly right now everybody's trying to chuck AI at everybody in every way, and it does feel a little bit like that film Everywhere, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So yeah, it's a very busy marketplace out there right now.
I just add to what both Kevin and Andrew have said there. Certainly how we approach it at Sopra Steria was looking at where AI can provide the data and give you insight above and beyond what information you've got to make decisions, and then using that information to look at where you can quickly and efficiently kind of make changes that will make a meaningful difference. And I highlighted examples before earlier where we've actually not only reduced our kind of energy usage and carbon emissions, but how that's delivered kind of value through making financial savings as well. Without AI providing that granular view of electricity consumption across our sites, we couldn't have delivered those targeted interventions. So it's looking at where you could get better data that gives you it enables you to make informed decision making, and then delivers the kind of measurable benefits to your organization as well, is all I'd say. Yeah.
Lovely. We've had a few more questions come in as well. So how can I factor in the shades of AI when making decisions on how AI can benefit my business?
If I make a start on that one, then I think that one of the first things you can do in thinking about where your AI provision is going to come from, so who is going to be your AI provider, assuming you're not developing your own in-house AI, and start to ask them that precise question. How green is their AI? What energy sources are they using for their data centers? How are they cooling their data centers? I mean, there are some. Microsoft tried one quite famously a few years ago of sinking a data center into the sea, where fewer people came into it, so they needed less air conditioning, and of course there was more greater environmental cooling going on anyway. But there are also potential flip sides to that as well. So I think even asking those questions is a good start, and asking those questions of the AI providers is the one thing that's going to start them to taking this seriously. I think they already take it seriously, but will really move them and motivate them to saying, you know what, our customers care about this. We need to take this seriously, and we need to make changes to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable and beneficial for the environment.
Yeah, and just another thought. I agree with Kevin on that one. The other way to do it is really during thinking about AI. It can be used in so many different ways. It's trying to use it more in the red or amber. So a lot of at the moment it's in that red space. So how do we use it more in green and amber? Well, it's sessions like today sharing actual ways of more use of green AI and amber AI. It's thinking about how AI can deliver your sustainability outcomes, rather than just be seen as a kind of core part of your business. So it's trying to get to a space, we're not there yet, where actually all AI is green or amber and none is red. We want to definitely flip it than what we've got today.
Great. And I think we've got a sort of build on this, and I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, was when lots of carbon impact from digital is via third-party providers that are required for running a digital business, i.e. Google, Meta, Miro, Asana, etc. Do you have any good suggestions for addressing that? We can switch electricity companies, but digital platforms less easily.
Thought from me, the sustainability impacts in IT are often built in during the design. So if you're making key decisions around which providers to use, that's why you need to embed sustainability into the design or the procurement processes. So start as early as possible. Where you're faced with systems and services that are already up and running, and you might have commitments to those suppliers, it's still putting pressure on them and asking them for data. So asking them about how much energy, water, and CO2 is used through the provision of its, the services you consume. The more that we can challenge these organisations and be transparent about, their impact, I think it will start from there. So first of all, if you can, do it in the design, but if you can't, start asking the questions now.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Andrew said there, really. I mentioned earlier on in my presentation how supply chains key to managing risks around rising carbon emissions and the use of digital technologies. But one organisation alone can't get to net zero, reduce its environmental impact. So it really is about collaboration across the supply chain and identifying those partners that are innovating. So everybody's on a journey. We're not going to get there overnight, and that's why many organisations have set themselves timescales of 2040 or 2050 to get to net zero. So yeah, key partnerships and innovation across the supply chain will be key.
And just to add finally, that pressure really will make a difference, because I think that some of these companies, the hyperscalers and people like that, have seen so much opportunity with AI, which, as we've been saying, there is, and it's exciting. But their net zero commitments seem to have dropped down the priority list a little bit. And once more, I think if customers and clients are coming back to them and saying, we care about this, that will make them care about it more as well. And so collectively, it leads to raising this up the agenda. And going back to Andrew's point about Lord Kelvin, if we're not measuring it, we can't improve it. So it's quite reasonable to reach out to Google, Meta, Miro, Asana, and others and say, please tell me what is, if I create a Miro board, what's the carbon impact of that? If they can't tell you, ask them to tell you. Say, well, why not? I can go to other suppliers who can tell me, and use your position in the market.
And I think this is, I don't know if you'd have anything more to say on, but I just want to acknowledge this comment or question that someone else has put, which is, what measures can be put in place to mitigate and manage the negative impact of AI? The amount of energy and water that is involved seems to be a hidden cost, which is concerning. I think you've probably covered that, but just to pause for a moment if you've got any more comments there.
Yeah, just to address the hidden aspect, it probably is hidden. It's hidden from the users. When users are currently using some of the GPT-4, for example, it's not ever present. So we do need to get to make it more visible. But if we're making it more visible, then it would address behaviour. I think in terms of addressing that and address it, make it more visible. But actually, some of the steps we've talked about, measure how you're planning to use that AI, and then there's specific actions. I just referenced one of them, which is moving your provider of data center from Germany to France. That's one tangible example. There's a whole host of other ones. Select the right hardware. The amount of data that you're using in your AI model is directly linked to the amount of energy it takes to power it. So there are some really fundamental things that you can do to reduce the environmental impact of AI. So there is hope, but I honestly don't. I think it's quite such a new area in the, AI is new, but certainly the environmental impact of it and what to do about it. I speak to a lot of people who just, they wouldn't know where to start. So I think the key message is we're here to help.
Lovely, thank you. And I'm going to take a final question. This one is quite specific, so perhaps if you can't come up with something on the spot, everyone, that's fine, and we can follow up with this person afterwards. But the question is from Britch, who has asked, which kind of AI could be used to reduce emissions in the mining sector? Does anybody have any ideas there? There's a pause.
There is.
I feel like that's something that you all need to ponder.
I think it depends on the business problem that in the mining sector. I would say probably most AIs are applicable. It depends, if you've got a mining organization that needs to reduce its operational impact, well, some of the AIs that Avinash talked about, the facilities, the energy consumption of your operations, the AIs within those. But yeah, very happy to have a follow-up conversation, a more considered answer, I think, unless Kevin and Avinash have got one.
No, I think that's a very good way of putting it. My mind was going towards the transport side of things and using digital twins to improve transport and how AI can help there if you're including that side within the whole mining sector. But yes, I think as you say, Andrew, it's not an area I know a huge amount about.
And I think it would, you know, as Andrew mentioned earlier, that AI readiness piece would often be where we would start, and a discovery piece on how, you know, what is best for your business and the market. So Britch will be in touch and we can pick up another conversation offline. But that's everything from today. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you and for everyone for joining us. That was brilliant, and it was really good to hear from our colleagues over at Sopra Steria Next as well. So next month we are going to hear back from our colleagues in CX Partners on prototyping, and the email will go out really soon to let you know how you can sign up for that one. But yes, thank you so much everybody for joining us today. It was great to see you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.